Hey Team YouTube, hopefully a quick video. I'm doing some struts for a 2004 Pontiac Montana. This video will be applicable for any GM 2000s front wheel drive model. So like, Impalas, Grand Prix, and of course the minivans, and probably down to the, the Malibus and the G6s and stuff like that too, I would imagine. So let's talk about what I ordered, what I got. First and foremost, you get the strut. The only thing that comes with the strut is the nut on top of it. Yes, I'm down here in my basement because it got cold here in the upper Midwest, and I just dragged everything inside because that's how I roll. So, also purchased this particular kit. This is a suspension mount kit. And what comes in the box? Well, let's talk about it. First of all, you get a couple pieces of steel. This part here is something that would be a replacement for the top steel part on the bellow. And by the way, in here, you also have that bounce bumper here. I'm just turning on my headlight there to show it to you. This one was in good shape, so I did not purchase another one. So this part here is unused. Throw it in the box. This here is the cap that goes under the nut on the top of the strut assembly. We have the top piece here that bolts onto the vehicle. Then we have a stack of plastics. This particular plastic right here, okay, it goes on here. Now, I've taken and I've cut a little scribe line just with a razor. That's the high spot. And best guess after removing struts is that this would go on here with the high spot. Oh, let me put a little light on that. With the high spot, if the high spot's going this way, it's perpendicular to those holes that are cut in there, or the studs, or whatever you want to call it. And what also is a giveaway is on the bottom here you have a little notch, and I thought that was a manufacturing defect, and it doesn't look the greatest, but it lines up with a little tab right there on this strut tower top. So this gets pushed on. I'm going to do that off camera here real quick. All right, back at him. The next piece to go on would be this thrust bearing. It would go with these notches here, looking at the old strut, how it's put together, leaving indents on it. This would go like this, facing downwards towards the spring. Then we have this hard plastic part right here, and that goes on here. All right, and then we have, this is a rubber piece, and on the original strut, there was the same rubber piece. You could technically reuse that, but why would you? So over here, and I've cleaned them up. The only things we're reusing from the original strut is the bellow and the bounce bumper in there. And we're also going to reuse the bottom rubber piece, and that goes on. There's a couple of little tabs here that keep it on right. And of course, the spring-a-ling-a-ding-ding. Now, tip, tag goes up here. One cool thing about the OEMs, the original one on the van, was that it came with a little push nut here that held that lower rubber piece on. Obviously right there, where this would go in, there's no hole for it, and I'm not gonna drill one. So, but it fits on really nicely. So past that, just gotta comb press that spring with the spring compressors, and let's go ahead. Maybe I'll see you on the flip side, YouTube. Hey Team YouTube. The easiest way I have found for this particular style of strut and spring to get this on is to, first of all, line up the end of the spring with the little detent there, and then have the nut on the spring compressor. I'm doing this, holding this thing up, so it just is like, you can get the wrench or the impact on it. It's just right past the edge of the the guard there on the strut. So we're going to proceed like that. That's the way I've done it before, and seems like it always works. So as you can see, the spring end is more or less lined up there. What I was hoping for, which I usually get, is for this, bolt head on the spring compressor here to be exposed and not interfering with the tab here, that guard on the strut. This one's a little off, and that sucks because now it's a box wrench or open end wrench time to turn. But let's just go through the order one more time. You got the rubber at the bottom, the spring, then you put the bellow with that steel thing on, then you put the spring on, then it's the rubber, it's that plastic thing that meshes with the thrust bearing, then the angled piece, and then the top of the strut. Then you got the little metal thing here, and then the nut. And this is just literally finger tight right now. Now, because the minivan has a cowl, or scuttle as the British would call it, that makes it impossible to really get anything in here, what I try to do is I take my battery impact and I will set it on the mid setting. So I'll just go badink. Oh, come on. There we go. I'll set it on the mid setting, which the top setting works out to be roughly 100 foot-pounds. The middle one is somewhere in the middle, about 50 foot-pounds. That's what they say the torque needs to be. And when you set it on that mid setting, you don't get the same kind of push that you would with the high setting. And of course, this is nothing like an air impact. I would never recommend using an air impact to put this nut down, if you're, going full bore with shop air and a quality air tool. The replacement nut is a 19. The original one from GM, just for reference sake, is a 21. So last thing is, if you want to counter, have a rotation counter, that little hex feature in there to hold the spindle of the strut still while you tighten the nut is a 6mm. That's all for now, YouTube. I'm gonna see if I can get this thing together, or get those spring compressors off, and I'll have a couple struts to go on my van. Oh, it's a cold Monday night here in the upper Midwest. I couldn't leave all y'all hanging without seeing the strut in the car. One quick thing, the wedge does face inboard in the car. Number two, even though these are these wonderful KYB gas charge strut blah blah blah, I have a small issue with the way the studs came through. What I actually had to do was take the outboard stud, put the nut on, and then I tapped the stud so it would face inboard a little bit, so it would actually go up in the hole. And I thought, well, that ain't right. I better tell somebody so that somebody knows. And of course, the way it's designed, those studs have those gripping threads up underneath, and they actually can wobble a little bit. But there's the end of the stud. You can actually pound them out if you wanted to, just like a wheel stud. So I had to tap, tap, tap to get it to go. And again, put a nut on the end so you're not beating up the threads. And then again, lightly with a hammer, and then it'll straighten itself out once you start putting torque on the fasteners. That's all I got, YouTube. Have a great night.